So funny how that happened, almost like a classroom, right? It just like naturally the conversation dies down. It's time to transition. So thanks y'all for being here. I'm gonna turn this mic down a little bit. That sounds pretty hot. That better? Yeah. So thank y'all for being here. I just want to really quickly say, my name's Tyler. I'm the teacher of this service learning student leadership course here, and everything that you're going to see tonight, all the discussion guide, the agenda, everything you've got in your hands, this canvas, this presentation here, everything you're going to see was put on by the students in this class as their class final project. And so I just want to give a big appreciation to the students of SL 394. And one of those students is standing right next to me, my buddy Dane, who's gonna guide us through this thing tonight. So I'm gonna turn it over to him.
Hey guys, my name's Dane. I'm a student in service and social justice with Professor Gideon over here. Thank you guys for letting me do this. Shout out to all my classmates out there chilling. Yeah, I got sent up here to be slaughtered, if you ask me, but it's all good. So I'm here. We're going to be screening the Gaza Fight for Freedom film by Abby Martin, and then I think Sarah, when you're ready to come up here, you just let me know.
Hey y'all. I'm Sarah Salazar-Hughes. I'm an associate professor in global studies, and I've worked in Palestine for a little over a decade now, and so I'm here to share some remarks to get us started. Thank you so much for the invitation, and because it's Friday night and it's been a long week and I'm tired, I'm going to read it a little. I needed notes. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak at this screening of Gaza Fights for Freedom. We're here this evening together to learn more about the history and context of the current and repeated Israeli onslaughts on the Gaza Strip. The Strip is home to about 2.3 million Palestinians. About half of them are children. The majority of them are refugees or the descendants of refugees from 1948. Gaza has been under blockade for 30 years and under a complete aerial, land, and sea siege for 16 years, during which time there have been 5 so-called Gaza wars. These Gaza wars are cynically described by Israeli leaders as mowing the lawn. Periodic episodes of killing and destruction that have been a price Israel is willing to pay to avoid being pushed towards any peace settlement with Palestinians. As I'm here, I'd like to encourage you to watch, in addition to watching this excellent but also devastating documentary tonight, to check out a project called Gaza in Context, which includes a 20-minute video and also teaching guides that were created by my friend and colleague and Palestinian-American scholar Noor Judah, and also human rights attorney and Professor Noor Erekat. Their project, Gaza in Context, emerged during the summer of 2014, when Israel had launched its most devastating offensive up to that date on the besieged Palestinian population of Gaza. Despite the immense destruction wrought upon a captive population, Israel successfully claimed victimhood in Western media as it launched 6,000 airstrikes and 50,000 artillery shells in the air and ground offensive that lasted 51 days. Gaza in Context was part of a wider effort to counter this narrative, situating this violence within the broader historical context of Israel's settler colonization of Palestine. During that devastating offensive against Gaza in 2014, I was living in Israeli settlements in the Judean hills of the occupied West Bank, where I was doing long-term ethnographic research into how settlers were materially and discursively justifying their violent presence in that landscape, and where they were building what they promoted as suburban utopias. It was, as you might imagine, there was a lot of cognitive dissonance in being in that space at that time. And also in the subsequent months over several years that I ended up spending in Israeli settlements. It was pretty jarring and often pretty soul-crushing. The Israeli settler narrative is that Arabs, because they don't think there's a such thing as Palestinians, so Arabs, are inherently violent people, and that they have no option but to meet violence with violence. Their narrative is that Jewish Israelis love life and love building, and the evidence for that is their ongoing settlement construction, and that Palestinian Arabs love death and destruction, and the evidence for that is their refusal to submit to complete annihilation at the hands of the settler state. At the same time as they're espousing that narrative, members of the settlement where I was living went and burned a family's house down in a nearby Arab village and killed most of the members of that family, leaving one young child alive who suffered extreme burns and had to then live with that for the rest of his life. This anti-Palestinian dehumanizing narrative is a way of justifying any and all violence against Palestinians, and a way of framing any violence on the part of the Israeli state as not really violence, actually. And this film is going to do a great job of disrupting that narrative. Here in the US, another settler state, the knee-jerk assumption that pro-Palestine and pro-Zionist speech is inherently anti-Semitic is a continuation of this dehumanizing discourse. It is frankly racist to assert that any and all Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim critique of Israeli colonialism could not possibly have any merit. It must only be based in their innate hatred. And it can't possibly come from an ongoing experience of displacement, occupation, and elimination. This is Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism manifest. We're now seeing a shocking and devastating escalation of ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Nearly 7 months into Israel's current campaign, over 34,000 people have been killed, the majority of them women and children. Another 77,000 people have been wounded, at least 8,000 are missing. And in the occupied West Bank, nearly 500 people have been killed with thousands wounded. And once again, that village of Duma is being attacked with settler violence and homes are being burned. There is nowhere safe to go in Gaza. And frankly, there is nowhere safe to go anywhere in Palestine. And now Israel's planning a ground offensive into Rafah. Hospitals and schools have been targeted. Recently, mass grave killings have been discovered, and famine and waterborne disease is rampant. What's happening in Gaza is a genocide, and the ongoing work towards settler colonialism's ultimate goal of elimination. Okay, this is just going to be heavy, so hang with me. There are 3 things that I hope we all take away from this film and discussion. First, the Palestinians have attempted all forms of anti-colonial protest. They have exhausted every tool in their struggle for rights, dignity, and self-determination, including appealing to the United Nations, appealing through diplomatic channels, internal boycotts since the 1930s, appealing to the international community to engage in boycott, divestment, and sanction, resistance through art and popular protest, and armed resistance, which has ebbed and flowed in prominence. But as far as Israel and the United States are concerned, there is no acceptable way for Palestinians to fight for liberation, and any such struggle will result in violence, collective punishment, and death. And this is going to be clear in the instance of the film that we're watching today. Second, Palestinians and Zionists are not fighting for the same things. The Zionist project is settler colonial, aimed at land dispossession and elimination, in order to assure settler futurity and to maintain Jewish-Israeli dominance in all of Palestine. For Palestinians across Gaza, the West Bank, and in Israel, there's a shared experience of displacement, dispossession, and erasure, not to mention folks in refugee camps outside of that territory. Israeli leaders and military officials have been very clear again and again in this current campaign that they are trying to render Gaza unlivable. Netanyahu has said he wants to make it a desert island. We're watching in real time a genocide. Palestinians are fighting for their lives, freedoms, rights, and profound love of life and land because colonization is a death-making project. And third, we are witnessing all the forces of empire collude. Media, educational institutions, fear-mongering, and complicity in enabling an act of genocide in real time. Though we take pride in the fact that college campuses, including the CSU, have often been central to social movements, including civil rights, anti-war, women's rights, and third world liberation struggles, the reality is that there's a long history of violent suppression of student movements for liberation. The very movements that our universities now want to claim as their revered history through various DEI initiatives. Today, college students across the country and the world are speaking up and standing together in support of an anti-colonial struggle by a displaced and besieged Palestinian population that is subject to a racist, discriminatory apartheid system implemented by a settler colonial state. They are being met with violence, suppression, arrests, doxing, suspensions, expulsions, and more. But they're still not stopping. Large numbers of students at numerous universities are realizing that the narrative on Palestine and Israel is anti-Palestinian, and that the US is complicit in colonial violence against Palestinians. The crackdown on pro-Palestine speech communicates that Palestinian lives do not matter. Only in a situation of colonialism and racism would the slaughter of 40,000 Palestinians, more than 2/3 of which are women and children, in response to the death and capture of 1,200 Israelis, be seen as a proportional, justified action. We insist on our freedom to research and teach inconvenient truths. I want to thank everyone who's here tonight, despite and in open opposition to the fact that on college campuses we've been told that we can't talk about Palestine and anti-Zionism. I want to thank CSUMB's associated students for passing an excellent ceasefire and BDS resolution. Like their peers all over the nation, they recognize Israeli actions in Gaza and the West Bank as genocide, while also condemning anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And I want to thank the students of the Service and Social Justice Service Learning class for organizing this event and for their steady and savvy response to pushback. I'm deeply appreciative of the local Monterey Palestine Solidarity Group for their activism, and I want to thank all of our students who speak up on behalf of Palestine. At this moment, when students and wider community on campus and beyond are clamoring to better understand and act against this terrifying escalation in colonial violence, it's our responsibility as a public institution of higher education to provide opportunities for learning, critical thinking, and knowledge production. The only world where we are all safe and well is a world where we are all free.
I never imagined I'd be in this position speaking to everyone. I don't see myself as an academic. I'm not very well educated on the topic. I know what I know because of social media, video, and stuff like that. I think most of us are pretty much like that. But last event that Tyler did, we watched the film Israelism, and I realized then that how much I needed to learn about the subject. I felt an overwhelming need to try and help in any way that I can. I have a disability, my arms don't work, or my left one doesn't, my eyes don't work, my legs don't work. Nothing works, right? But I try and get up here and do what I can. It's crazy how I'm so nervous, but at the same time, I always felt like I wanted to be up here because I felt like my words would meant something. So I'm here. And I feel like, even though I'm scared, I think a lot of people are too, because I was where you're at now, and I realized that even though I'm scared, I need to step up to the plate and start living by my ideals, not just talking about it, because for me it's like, I talked about this in class once, but we all have this opportunity to make a change or to help somebody, and we for me at least, I can rarely say I step up to the plate and do that. And it always bugged me because it's like, come on, man, stop being scared, say something, do something, help somebody. And I make these stickers, I made the buttons, and I'm just like, that's not enough. What else can I do? Like, what more can I give? Because you see these people and the facts that Sarah mentioned, it's like, man, like, I'm doing nothing. I've done jack diddly squat. And I know it feels like that for me sometimes, but I realize that in my position, where I'm at in my life and stuff, there's only so many things that I can do. But I'm going to give everything that I can to this cause, and that's all we all can do. So thank you guys. You have courage to be here, just like I have to be up here, or I choose to be up here. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dane, and it does take a lot of courage to get up here. It takes some courage to even come to this event, right, with the repression that's happening on this campus that Sarah talked about a little bit, right, but that's kind of the message that I want to get up here and talk about a little bit tonight, is to set the context for how this event came to be, essentially, right? I did the screening of Israelism a couple of months ago, and there was a little bit of pushback there. We had some sponsors removed and things like that, but when my students decided to do this screening, I never imagined that same type of process would happen here to this student-led final project event, essentially, right? This is a student event, y'all, and every sponsor that we've had except for one, the Department of Social Sciences and Global Studies, has had to bail for one reason or another, right? Has been pressured by this administration to remove their support from this event. Even the class name and the Service Learning Institute name were not supposed to be on the flyer for this event. We're supposed to disassociate the Service Learning Institute and the class who created the event from the event, right? Based on the whim of administration and their fears, based on what they see happening around the country, right? And I can understand that. I can understand some of their trepidation and not wanting to see those things happening on this campus as well, right? But yeah, that's the context. And so the flyer that got made a month ago had to be changed about, 6 or 7 times, y'all, to, we had ADLC passing out a flyer a month ago that, was like 6 iterations ago, because we had to remove all of our sponsors. And the last flyer, we ended up just not putting any sponsors on it at all, right? Because we don't want to get anyone else in trouble, essentially, right? Even just yesterday, we had a sponsor get a call from administration and let me know that they had to be removed from the flyer. So that's all I really want to say up here today, is to set that context for how hard these students had to actually work and what they had to navigate within the administration to even pull off this event, right? And I say all that just to say that, this stuff is happening behind the scenes at this university. No one came to talk to us. No one came to have conversations with us to find out what our motivations were for this event, to talk to the students who planned this and find out what their motivations were for this event. They just decided that because this is a pro-Palestine event, it was anti-Semitic, right? And that it needed to be shut down. I had a conversation with the police commander just this afternoon, right? Because they were going to be having a police presence at this event because of safety concerns, right? Do you see safety concerns in this room? If they had talked to us for half a second, like she finally eventually did, she realized what this event is about, and we don't have police in this room, right? Because they had one conversation with me, right? Instead of just being afraid and responding to that fear without ever having communication with any of us putting this on, or any people on campus who have a pro-Palestine stance, right? So we're going to try to change that, of course, but I just wanted to set up the context for this a little bit, right, and show that what we're fighting against here is that suppression, is that repression, to be able to show things like this, right? To be able to show the reality and have some real conversations about what is happening, right? And not be led by fear. To let this be a place of learning like it's supposed to be, right? This is a class event. This will hopefully be a great discussion. You've all got those discussion guides that, again, were made by the students in the class, and I think they're really well done, so I hope we get good use out of those after the film, right? And we have a great chance to discuss and learn from the film and from each other today, and maybe to build some community around this important topic on this campus and not let it be silent anymore, right? To make this a campus conversation in the way that it should be. Associated Students has started that, and yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Sarah. I wanted to share the Associated Students resolution with y'all. That's some of the materials that we prepared, because I think that's an amazing start to this conversation that has to happen on this campus, right? And they have implored all of us to do that work as well, and to have those conversations in our own spaces. And so that's what I plan to do, and I hope that the rest of us can plan and pledge to do that as well, wherever we're at, on this campus or off the campus, to have the conversations. Don't let stuff happen in the background. Don't be led by fear. Have the discussions. Make the learning happen, right? Thank you all for being here on a Friday night too. I know, you could be anywhere right now, right? And you're here talking about Palestine, so I appreciate you. I appreciate y'all being here. So, all right, we're gonna get into the movie. Thank you all for coming. So y'all, one quick thing that I want to say and then invite our students up here to lead discussion is that this film is about Palestine, right? But it's for us. And I think they made that pretty clear, that it's for an American audience. It's for a Western audience, right? They're not appealing to Israel. They're appealing to us, right, to do something about this. They're appealing to the U.S. They're appealing to Western audiences to do what they can to bring justice in this situation, right? So that's why we're here today, and I appreciate y'all being here to watch the film. I'd like to invite up Astrid and Jade, and they're going to lead us through the next piece, which is a short discussion. Right on.
Hi everyone, I'm Astrid.
And I'm Jade.
And we're going to go through the discussion portion. Really quickly, this is probably my third or fourth time seeing this film, and I know it's a lot to take in. So if we could just take one collective breath in and out. Okay. So we're going to go through some small group discussions. If you look in the pamphlet, the page on the left has some stats from the film. I know when I watched it, every time I watch it, I gain something new, a new stat. It's just a lot to take in. And then in that middle one, there's 5 questions. So if you want to talk to the people around you for 10 minutes, and then we'll go back to the large group and share out our thoughts.
So coming back together as a larger group, we're going to go through the discussion questions, each like number by number. So from number 1, how does knowing what happened 5 years ago shape your understanding of what is happening today?
I think after you watching that video and seeing where the conflict is now, it's very depressing to realize that things haven't changed that much. They have changed in the sense that the issue is becoming more global in the sense that everyone understands the plight and has a way better understanding of where the Palestinians are coming from. So in that sense, things are good. But on the other hand, it's like, these people are still getting screwed over in the worst way possible. People are dying. They're losing their homes, their land, in a sense, their culture and their identity, because they're being forced to leave. That's pretty bad, to say it lightly.
For number 2, what are the systems in place that allow this crisis to continue going?
For those that aren't aware, State of Israel was created through British mandate. And it was created through a lot of lies. So the person in charge of the territory of Palestine, who was put in charge by the British Empire, made false promises to both Zionists and Palestinians that they would each get their own autonomy of the region. And of course, he lied. There was, especially through influence with the United States, that having geopolitical control in the Middle East is important because this was right before the Cold War, right after World War II. So they saw Soviet Russia as a potential threat, and so they wanted Middle East control. And so that's how the State of Israel was formed, through purely colonial powers and the suppression of the native people. And another thing is, a misconception is that being Palestinian means that they are Arab or Muslim, which is not entirely true. Palestinians composed of Christians, Jews, and Palestinians. And it's very disappointing to see that Zionists have hijacked Judaism to essentially be anti-Muslim, because they even treat Jews who are Palestinian as they're fake Jews. They don't actually practice Judaism, and they don't belong in Israel, and they are targeted just like everyone else. And the systems in place are still ongoing. The United States still backs Israel, despite there being obvious genocide going on. It's been documented on TikTok for years now, and it just goes to show that it doesn't matter like what we tell our government until something changes. Something has to fundamentally change. Otherwise, this is not going to end.
I think it's also important to touch on the fact that the U.S., I think, pretty much since this decade started, a couple decades ago, the U.S. has a really long history of seeing Middle Eastern people and Arab people and brown people as subhuman. I think that it goes a little bit deeper than just like us wanting to aid Israel for the state or the purpose of having control in the Middle East. It is also pretty common knowledge that the U.S. has a long-standing history of war crimes against Arabic people with our work in Afghanistan, our withdrawal in Afghanistan that destabilized Afghanistan and put leadership back into the hands of terrorists, that our work in Iraq, our work in Iran. There has been almost every Middle Eastern country you can name has been some proof, irrefutable proof of the U.S. committing some form of egregious act against innocent Middle Eastern folks. So I think that that is also a pretty blatant system of racism, of being anti-Arab, being Islamophobic, kind of like all of those terms as well. So I think it's important to just recognize that system.
Anybody else have any?
Yeah, was there notice that we were going to be videotaped and recorded and have a camera pointed at us? Because I didn't see any notification participants.
Yeah, right there on the registration table.
Yes, it will tell you in the Google form that you have your consent to be filmed.
I didn't see any of it in the paperwork that was distributed to us at the desk.
It was right in front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw
It
it.
was very dark. I didn't see it.
You should have read it.
I don't think
You can
it's
just walk
okay if
out.
people don't want to be filmed.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, totally fine.
No, I know that.
I'm sorry that
Walked out,
you
but I'm
didn't
just
see it.
saying, in the interest, since we're discussing a film in which people's rights are supposed to be respected, then perhaps
I saw it clear as I walked in.
We could maybe have a place where folks could sit who don't want to be filmed.
Or you
And
could
then-
just not come in if you don't want to be filmed.
Yeah, no, chill. So I'm really sorry you didn't see the sign. We put one on either side of the door to try to
Very
make sure
dark
that
when we
everybody
walked in.
could see it and do the registration thing. But sorry if you didn't feel like being filmed. I apologize. We did our best to try and inform folks. But let's try and go ahead and get the conversation back onto the film. Yeah, thanks.
Continuing on to our next question. What feelings ran through you when witnessing the events at the peaceful protest?
Have any of you ever held a dead body? Because I have. I have. And seeing people hold their loved ones like that, it reminds me of when I had to. It is something that no one should ever have to go through. They didn't get to say goodbye. They were people with dreams, with aspirations. They were students like us. And I feel like people here who haven't spoken out yet or have attended this screening just for like the points of saying, oh, I went, so therefore I'm doing enough. You haven't done enough. There is always something more you can do. Before this, I was scared of potentially being arrested for the actions I may want to do for Palestine or for any other social justice. But being arrested is nothing compared to what the IDF is doing to these innocent Palestinians, innocent women and children. I think of my little brother. I think of my nieces and nephews who are the same ages of these children in these films. They don't know what's going on in Palestine, but in another life, this could have been their classmates. This could have been their friends. And so I feel like people who sat through this with a straight face, I don't understand how, because our tax dollars are funding this genocide. Through the Panetta Institute, CSUMB is lobbying for the Department of Defense, which funds this genocide. And I feel like not enough people know this, and I feel like people need to speak out about this.
Thank you. I completely agree. I don't share your experience. But even just looking at this screen, I've been so deeply, to say moved would be like nothing in comparison to what I've seen in this film. Anyone else would like to share their experience as they were watching this film?
I've been keeping up with all the videos. So like when Aaron Bushnell burned himself alive, I saw that video. When the IDF went into Al-Shifa Hospital and filmed the Red Crescent in the hospital, I saw that. So at this point, I've become numb to it, and it sucks because I'm 22 years old, and well, I was 21 when the genocide started on October 7th. That wasn't when it started, but like when the attack started. But yeah, I also think that it doesn't matter what I feel, because it's not that. I am not experiencing what Palestinians are facing. I authored the resolution that Associated Students passed, and so I had to watch a lot of things. I had to read a lot of things, and it's been pretty hard to sleep for the past couple months. I forgot where I was going with this, but and all in all, it doesn't really matter what I feel. And ever since this like became really public, I feel like there's a target on my back. But again, it doesn't matter because I'm not experiencing that.
Right. No, I think it does matter how you feel, though, young blood. You know what I'm saying? I think it does matter. You know what I mean? Because the fact that you feel anything means that you care, right? So I don't think people should poo-poo on how you feel, right? Because the fact that you feel something is what matters, yo. If you don't feel shit, that's the problem, right? If you don't feel nothing, then that's the issue, right? So the fact that you feel something is what matters, right? Now the next thing is like, what's the energy about to be next then? You know what I mean? So if the young sister back here is saying that the Panetta Institute is got feet in the game of trying to add money from our university to support these horrendous actions and these horrendous situations, what we about to do about it? You know what I'm saying? What's up? Like there has to be a next step for all of us. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us who work, I'm a professor here, I work here, you know what I'm saying? We do our thing here. A lot of people in my class before here, but it's like at some point it got to change to something different. Like we can watch the movie, that's dope. The movie's horrible, it's heartbreaking, it's rage-inducing. The fact that people can live in such fictional realities and have to lie to themselves in order to act as if fellow human beings that didn't control who put the soul in their body, what era you was gonna be born in, can treat other human beings like straight up garbage, is just, our brains don't process stuff like this. Everybody sitting in here, your brain don't work like that. You wouldn't even be here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the fact that your brain is like, it doesn't process things in a way that can allow you to see other people suffering and not do nothing about it, right? It matters. So I think it does matter how you feel, young blood. You know what I mean? It does. So, sorry that you feel pressure and attack. You ain't sleeping, man, because People who come from struggle, who done held their bodies, who done been in shootouts and all that shit before, man, like we see this, it's all triggering for us. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, at a certain point, we gotta think about what we about to do next as people who care. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta risk some things in order to make things change. You know what I mean? So if it's sit-ins, like other universities is doing, die-ins for even an hour or two, like if you can't, you know, make it up or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what the whole point is, for us to be able to get in and try to organize something. You know what I mean? The people who here, the people who actually care on the university, right? And, you know, we could all get fired for it, whatever, but like, okay, whatever. it's whatever. So, what we about to do about it is my question. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that, I don't want to derail the whole thing, but what the fuck y'all trying to do? Like, what's up? Like, who trying to do something? Like, I'm always down for whatever. It's a protest, like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, what y'all trying to do? That's what I'm trying to say. I'll shut up.
Camp out? Yes? No, I'm serious, because we can all sit here, theorize, say we're gonna do it, but no, like literally, let's go camp on the campus. All of us together. There's power in numbers. Bring your friends. Show up to the things that people organize, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of heart. It's triggering. Show up for them. Literally, if you're ready to camp, we will organize it.
Yeah, to what you were saying and what he was supporting you on that, I totally understand that sometimes when I watch videos and stuff like that, I actually have to take a break from it. I cannot do it consistently. I am a person too. I'm a human. I feel things. I get sad, upset, depressed, you know, along with watching this conflict. I have my own real life issues and my responsibilities, and that's a heavy burden for anybody, you know, in, you know, college and stuff and relationships and all that. It's tough, you know, it's hard. I too struggle at sleeping at night, and that's why I'm an insomniac, and I always try and keep myself busy at all times to keep my mind from going to that place. And I'm sure plenty of people here have some sort of mechanism to help them get through that. So yeah, and so you're saying you did the AS, what's the word? Resolution? That's fire, dude. Shout out to you, dude. Like, I didn't read all of it, but what we Tyler put it in class, and I was like, yo, that's pretty lit, dude. So yeah, awesome. Congrats to you on that. All right, let's get back to the next discussion. What number are we on? 4. How can one support the innocent people affected by these atrocities? Does anyone want to speak on that?
Something that needs to be mentioned is the profit motive. And I just saw an article in which 250 representatives of investment firms and banks stated, we will not hire a single person who has ever aired or expressed an opinion in support of Palestinians. So this is what all of us are up against. And in addition to that, there are billions and trillions of dollars being made by these banks and investment firms. And investing in stocks is really the only way of making money in this society. And so we've got a tough choice. We're either going to make money and beat inflation with one of the few proven investments that remain available to us, or we're going to say no. We're not going to invest, we're going to divest, and we'll lose to inflation. So this leads us to a moral and political conundrum. And you know, there's a little bit of backstabbing, and as a side note, this is a prime example of how we give in to authority. We say, hey, the people in authority posted a note, just get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can't face up and speak out against authority in this very room, how are we going to support the Palestinians? We're not practicing our own right to protect our own privacy and dignity. So how can we speak out and say that we represent another group halfway around the world? We've got to practice it right here. If you don't speak out in your own self-defense, if you can't stand with me or with yourselves and protect your right to privacy and freedom of communication, this is a moot point. So if it can't be exercised in this room, this whole discussion is pointless.
Are you still mad that you didn't read the sign at the front? You're still mad about
See, this
that?
is the type of sarcasm.
No, it's not
where you
sarcasm.
can't
There was a
have-
clear sign. It was there. You didn't read it. That's on you.
So
Okay.
Or maybe it was
without
dark
getting
and you
distracted
didn't
by that conversation again, I feel what you're saying, and I think we do need to be able to stand up for ourselves and for each other. To get back to your piece about the profit motive, though, because I think it's really important. This university is also a corporation, right? This university is also driven by profit motives, right? All of our universities are driven by this exact same profit motive that you're talking about, right? So when we're having that conversation about the profit motives that drive administrative decision making and corporate decision making and political decision making, we need to include our university in those profit motives as well. Their goal is profit. If they don't make profit, they don't exist, right? Student education, secondary to profit, right? So when we're talking about profit motives, we have to include universities across the board in that conversation as well. I see a hand up there.
I think I'd just like to redirect, like kind of in that same vein, in conflicts such as this and in times such as this when there is this desire to make change and to impose your own free will, the trickle-down effect of that is that the most vulnerable communities are going to be impacted. Those with less of a voice will not have a chance that those with the voice have. And I think a good way to address the fourth question, how can one support the innocent people affected by these atrocities, is making space in your own communities for those who have less of a voice. Speaking out for those, making room at the table, and doing your part in your daily actions. And donate when you're able. Talk to somebody. It's going to be small actions that save us, you know.
Kind of also going off of that, like, I think it's important to recognize that there are ways to support Palestinian people and Arabic people and Muslim people outside of just speaking out against war. I mean, this, for how many people in this room was this the longest string of Arabic words anyone has ever heard? You know, like, there is culture behind this. You know, there's an entire people, and as an Arabic student, we don't have, like, a club on campus. There is none. When we take our census data, I can't say that I'm Middle Eastern. I have to say that I'm a white person. Do I look white? Am I treated as a white person on this campus? No. Do I have space to be an Arabic student who is not a Muslim student? Not particularly. Like, there are, from the ground up, ways of supporting members of the community who identify with these people outside of, you don't necessarily have to mobilize yourself, you know? Like, a lot of people don't have the privilege to mobilize or to use their voice. My existence in class is resistance. Like, if I, as an Arabic student, forfeit my college degree and protest, I'm doing what they want me to do. And I think it's really important to recognize that solely saying that war is wrong and that genocide is wrong really erases the larger parts of the Arabic identity and the Muslim identity and the Palestinian identity that need other support, because they're going to have to rebuild from nothing. And to recognize that it's not enough to just be like, war is bad. What other parts of culture are we going to cultivate then? I think that in having the discussion on how to help, you have to recognize other ways to rebuild a population of people outside of saying that killing them is wrong.
We had one question in the photo.
It wasn't necessarily a question, but it was a point of solidarity. I fully reject notions of for-profit for anything. It's just a matter of principle. But just like with the CFA strike, they're going to say, oh, for profit, for our budget, we'll go bankrupt if we do this or that. And when you strike, suddenly they have those funds. Suddenly, when you protest, when you make encampments, when you block those bridges, city officials, local government, admin will listen to you. So the for-profit, the scarcity that they'll constantly shoved down our throats is completely false. I don't care about profit in the face of genocide. I don't want to fund missiles. I want to fund education. And if you can't find a society that can run without arms, then it's not a society worth having.
I do just want to support like ways that you can like hands-on affect what's going on the ground in Palestine right now is to support organizations like the ones you guys have listed in the brochure. I personally use the Zakat Foundation that I support that is providing, we donated to the Zakat Foundation. Most recently, they were celebrating Ramadan and they were providing meals for their end of the celebration. And so looking at those cultural impacts, right? It's not just that buildings are being destroyed, it's that these people cannot celebrate their culture. They cannot enact their religious experiences because they don't have what they need to do so. And so we're removing their culture from themselves, not just their buildings. And so donating to these organizations help them get not just what they need for food and shelter, but it also helps them celebrate who they are as a people. And so a way that you really can is that $5 feeds a kid, you know, and that makes a big difference to that kid. So there are hands-on ways, if you're not a person who feels brave enough to go to protests or a camp out, there are still ways that you can make an impact, and having, always having those difficult conversations.
I also think, aside from money, education is also very important, and not just Palestinian culture, but also Jewish culture, because like I mentioned earlier, Zionism is a hijacking of Judaism. It's a perversion of Judaism. My dad's side is Jewish, so I've learned a lot about the culture. Passover is happening now, and Passover is about the liberation of the Jewish people from Egyptian slavery. And so they're learning about that. It like ties into what's happening now, the Palestinian liberation of their own oppression, and as well, like there is no dedicated Muslim space on campus, just like there is no dedicated Jewish space on campus. And I think learning more about both of them is very important, like so that what's happening in Palestine doesn't happen again.
Oh, I feel very emotional, kind of overwhelmed, and I think for me, it's very powerful to hear a lot of students talking about their experience, about learning about Palestine, and their experience, as someone who wrote the resolution. I think, I have been involved with Palestine solidarity work for a very long time, for probably about 20 years, and I think it's, but I only say that to say, I don't know what exactly, except for that, for a lot of you that are, you're in a time where maybe you've learned about what's happening in the last few years, maybe you've known about it for a long time, but you're learning about it through this really, really intense moment of really acute and horrifying violence, and also a time of social media where there's a viscerality to which you can see what's happening there. I didn't, in my many years of involvement in Palestine solidarity, I wasn't necessarily watching the kinds of videos that we're all seeing now. I didn't need to see those videos to know that, for me, this was an anti-colonial struggle. And I have a very clear picture of my commitments to that and what that means to me. And for me, that's not just about the Palestinian people, although I would say they are some of the most resilient and bravest people in the world and have been for a very long time. But they are also not the only ones engaged in deep and fierce and powerful anti-colonial struggle. I just wanted to underline and bring us back to, along with all the other kind of points people have made, that very consistently, one of the key calls that Palestinian people have made for solidarity have been boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Right. That comes from Palestinian civil society, and it is modeled after the global movement and apartheid in South Africa. So I'm old enough to remember when all of a sudden everyone was against apartheid in South Africa and Nelson Mandela was a hero. And I wasn't young and I wasn't old enough to really have been steeped in a time when that wasn't the case. But I mean, I remember even as like, you know, a young teenager being like, seems like the story about this place changed a lot in the last few years, because for a very, very long time, we as a global community were supposed to accept the fact that very clear apartheid and segregation and brutal repression in South Africa was somehow justified, that the South African government was justified, and that Nelson Mandela, amongst many others, was a terrorist. And so I just want to highlight that, because I don't know, you know, I'm not saying that I know what the solution is, but I do know that there have been incidents around the world of brutal repression that most of the globe ignores, cosigns, enables, and there have been, you know, global movements against it that have been effective. And so a big part of why Palestinian civil society pushes for BDS is because it had a very significant effect. And so basically, and just like what's happening with Palestinians and has for a very long time, in South Africa, while much of the world was saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry about what's happening there," it was South African people in the diaspora, but also African descended people in the diaspora who weren't necessarily South African, but who identified and very clearly saw what was anti-Black racism and colonial oppression. And so other colonized people also sided with South Africa. This is why it is South Africa who has gone to the International Criminal Court and tried to bring Israel there, right, and to account for their crimes. This is the history of South Africa, and it's an ongoing history. Things aren't perfect there, you know, still, but I just want to kind of underscore that, because I do think, and I again want to reiterate, you know, the appreciation for what Associated Students has done, because they have made a very strong call for divestment, and that these campouts and all these things that we're seeing all across the United States, their goal is divestment. That's what they're doing it for. And so that's something to think about, and I think every context is different. You know, Columbia University is a very particular place, right? UCLA, you know, all these other, I can't even name them all, there's so many places. And so they're all very particular places, right? And it's, you know, up to you as students to decide what makes sense for you, where you're at, and what your conditions are. But I just want to underscore that, like, you know, this is a long struggle, right? And it has been a long struggle, and it's a struggle that involves people all over the world. And so part of it is also remembering that the overwhelm that you feel, it's when you think it's up to you, and it's not up to you alone, right? There are people all over the world who have been struggling against this for a very long time, and they are not giving up.
The ANC question, that's a tough one, because one of their slogans was actually "kill the boers." And so the level of complexity and nuance involved in the ANC case and the South African case is a challenge. It's really, really difficult. And so in any political situation, I don't look for a good guy versus a bad guy. I don't look to label people. I just try to understand the situation. And the situation in South Africa is a nightmare. There are some incredibly serious problems within South Africa. And so even if one problem is solved, that doesn't mean that a utopian state has been achieved.
It means the struggle continues. And
Absolutely.
It doesn't undermine
Absolutely.
the legitimacy of the anti-apartheid and anti-colonial struggle, that the struggle continues.
Also add something, I think it is incredibly important to recognize that large political systems gain a lot of things when activism surrounds arguments about nuance and small differences and small inconsistencies and small things that might be deemed as controversial. And I think that it's really easy to get lost in small debates and trying to draw parallels between different atrocities when everything is atrocious. And that can be true. And I don't think it is as vital to the conversation to be nitpicky per se and to have the last word and kind of manipulate certain arguments just for the sake of being correct. I feel like this is so much bigger than all of us. This is so much bigger than having the last word. This is so much bigger than being right or being more informed than your counterparts, because the entire growth of this movement will come from educating each other and having open minds and having open discussions and checking your ego at the door. And so I think that that is a big thing to highlight throughout this conversation, that we are not here to be nitpicky. We are not here to unpack nuance. I think we are all here to learn and to respect one another. And so I think that that just general reminder that I feel like that's the focal point of all of this being here.
But threatening to kill your political opponent is not a subtle nuance. I mean, that's a major point.
Actually, Benjamin
That's very
Netanyahu literally is the reason why the former Prime Minister of Israel was assassinated. So I feel like that point is moot when you consider that Benjamin Netanyahu got someone assassinated, and he's not even from Israel. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Also,
But I was addressing the ANC question. And so is it nuance? Is it subtlety to ask if you threaten to kill people you disagree with politically, is that a nuance or is that an important point? And if we address that, then aren't we all learning about that culture and that society?
Well, I feel like the whole point I just made was that I'm not here to be nitpicky or argumentative.
But that's my question.
Let's
Is
open it up to
nitpicky?
some other
I'm
folks.
your question.
I think we should open it up to some
I'm
other
here to
folks.
learn.
We all want to have a back and forth.
So you don't want to learn a fact about South Africa?
This isn't about South Africa, this is about Gaza. Can we get back to the
Yeah, so again, this is, we could go back and forth on fine details all day long, and we could argue points, or we could have the larger discussion, right? And I think we're here to have the larger discussion. A comparison was made. If you don't agree with that, you've made your point, and other people have made their points, and I think that's fine. I think we're having a pretty good discussion, to be honest with you, so I think you've made your points, bro. But yeah, I think to just wrap up the discussion piece, I'd like to see if anyone has any other final thoughts or comments about the film, or about organizing, about how you're feeling, about any of the things pertinent to the film.
For me, like, at the end of the day, my goal is like collective liberation, and I think in order for that to happen, things like colonial powers, like the Western world, the U.S. empire, like all of it needs to fall, all of it needs to collapse. And in order to get there, we need to disrupt the economy, right? We need to stop economic movement. We need to disrupt, like make our infrastructure like basically useless. Collectively, like, using our bodies to block bridges and block that movement. But the thing is, once we start going in that direction, I think one thing that's important to know is that we need to prepare ourselves for the consequences of what collective liberation looks like. And we need to prepare ourselves for, making sacrifices, which I don't think it's too much to ask for considering what people are facing, these like great injustices and extreme violence. And I think some ways that we can start to kind of prepare ourselves for things like that are by like building community, establishing mutual aid, teaching each other, educating each other, and things like that. Yeah.
I completely agree, and I think you perfectly segued us into the last part of the presentation here. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in that discussion, for having the small group discussions, for having the large group discussions, for being brave enough to say things in this large group and share your own experiences, to share your emotions in this moment. It's all very important, right? And this is all part of building that community. So thank you to Jade and Astrid for leading that discussion. And so to close out here, I want to just invite up a few groups, and I'm just going to have everyone come up at once, and then we'll just go through having y'all talk about stuff. So I'd like to invite Marina up to speak about an event that she would like to put on. I'd like to invite ADLC up. We're going to hear from Edwin, and I'd like to invite Monterey Palestine Solidarity up. We're going to hear from Michael from MPS.
Hey, my name's Marina, and I'm putting together an event. We're still getting times that are going to work for us and my friends in Palestine. I was living there when the war started, and I have a lot of footage and a lot of pictures, a lot of interviews I took with children, resistance fighters, a lot of people that were affected. And so I want to kind of show the things that I gathered, and then I want to bring in my friends on Zoom from Palestine and have them speak about what life is like under occupation, how their lives have changed since the war started. A lot of my friends are located inside West Bank. And then I want to open it up to you guys for like a Q&A after. And so I would appreciate if all you guys show up. It's a lot for them to speak out. I have some friends that didn't want to speak out because they're scared they're going to get arrested again. So they're putting a lot on the line speaking, and I hope to see you guys at the event.
When is it?
I'm not sure yet. I'm putting it all together, so be open. I'm going to have a flyer coming out soon, so you guys keep an eye on it. Yes?
Where do we look for like that follow-up information?
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
So if you registered for this event, I have your email, and I'll email everybody that is here today if you'd like from that email list, and then also from the last email list from the other event that I collect. I'll email both of those, and then yeah, once we get this planned out, we'll try to share it as wide as we can. Yeah, thank you. Edwin.
Howdy, everyone. So I'm Edwin. I'm here on behalf of the collective of ADLC, and that's the Abolitionist Decolonial Learning Collective. So briefly explain what those big words mean. Abolition is a complete destruction of police and all forms of state violence. As we can see here, or even today, there are police marching on peaceful protesters all over the nation. So we see them as a direct extension of imperialist and capitalist interests rather than people. And then the other thing is the decolonization, because people often wonder, like, well, then what? And oftentimes the knowledge is already there, but oppressed, and we figure that if we can recenter the voices of women, indigenous people, and other colonized and oppressed people, then we can find a proper way forward. Today we were all here to learn together, which is kind of the fundamental parts of ADLC. Like, you've probably seen us around for direct action, but fundamentally we're together to learn because there's a lot we don't know. Like, the Palestinian issue is something that I've learned in the past 2 to 3 years, but I've been studying Latin American geopolitics for God knows how long, so I can see the connections between colonized people like the Zapatistas and the Palestinians. So that's just something I want to put out there. And there is a need to do something, and it does feel powerless to do it alone. And to some extent it is, but it's not us alone, as plenty of you have pointed out. It's done as a collective, as a group. No single person is expected to dismantle these oppressive systems. It all relies on us to work together, to rely on each other, to build those networks alternative to the ones that we have become so dependent on through mutual aid, through collective learning, and so much more. Yeah, so CSUMB has no encampment right now yet. If you're interested, reach out to me. But there's so much that we can still do. We've been really glad to support the AS resolution for divestment and the ceasefire call. We will gladly support any more of those movements from the faculty or even from admin, although we'll probably have to protest for that one. And we do carpools to MPS events when we can, to local protests. And of course, we share information we can. We rely on each other when things get tough, because it is hard to constantly be knowledgeable about this. And we rely on revolutionary optimism and hope for that. Because like when we get down, we look to what other people are already doing. The past week has been so good for me because I was suffering like 2 weeks of like illness and depression, and then I started seeing these encampments, and like, I want to do that. Not yet, but I will. Yeah. And yeah, even now, even though our campus is smaller and pretty apolitical, admin's still coming down on our voices. This Saturday, they canceled the involvement fair for all clubs, and although they didn't specify why, I have my reasons. That being said, us and other clubs are going to show up anyways because this campus is not admin, it is faculty and students. And more importantly, the club organizers have been shown up to give this campus life. So yeah, that's tomorrow. And yeah, I'm proud of what ADLC students and faculty have been able to do here, and I'm glad you all put this together and you were all here. And that's all I had.
Hi, my name is Michael, and I'm an organizer with Monterey Palestine Solidarity. We are an organizing collective based in the Monterey Peninsula, and who are dedicated to unconditional, unwavering support for the Palestinian struggle for liberation. I'm also a CSUMB alumni, so I'm appalled but not surprised to hear about the bullshit from the administrators around this event and other events that you've all put on. When I was a student here, my friends and I, including Professor Gidney,
Professor now,
yeah. We organized and struggled here for a different kind of university. We imagined something very different than the vision of the university administrators and their political and corporate interests that they serve. We imagined a university that was democratically run by the people who actually make up the campus community, the students, staff, and faculty. We also imagined a university that was divorced from the military-industrial complex that chose to support life-affirming projects rather than projects of death and destruction. We were also inspired by the university occupations that were happening around 2009, 2010 in New York and here in California. And I am once again so inspired by the occupations and the encampments that are spreading across campuses right now. I'm really excited. I wish I was a student again, but I'll be there if you all set up an encampment. I just want to let you know that Monterey Palestine Solidarity supports you in all of your struggles that you're engaged in here. And I also want to ask for your support and your solidarity. Since October, we've organized demonstrations, we've organized to support boycott, divestment, and sanctions. We've organized to raise money for local Palestinian community, members of our community who are trying to get their family out of Gaza. And we've put pressure on local governmental bodies to try to pass ceasefire resolutions, unsuccessfully, unfortunately. And many CSUMB students, ADLC and other students and faculty have supported those efforts and been involved. But we need to do more, and that means we need more organizers. So I want to ask you to, if you want to get involved with Monterey Palestine Solidarity, you should definitely get involved if you're a student with ADLC. If you want to get involved with Monterey Palestine Solidarity, though, just ask you feel free to come talk to me. I've got a sign-in sheet to get your contact information. You can check us out on Instagram. You can see our website. And I just want to say that we need to keep building this movement. We need to keep building these connections between the campus and the broader community. And we need to keep growing this movement in our region. So until Palestine is free, until we're all free. Thank you.
Y'all, thank you so much again for being here on a Friday night. Thanks for having the discussions. Thanks for sharing in the large groups, sharing in the small groups. If you didn't get it all on the way in, Monterey Palestine Solidarity has a bunch of resources on the table, ADLC. There's different resources on the table that will give information about boycott, divest, sanction, and ways that you as an individual can participate in that, right? We think that, that feels like you're not doing enough or whatever, right? But I can tell you the last 6 months or so without Starbucks, I haven't felt any sort of pain. My daughter has, but I haven't. It's been just fine, right? You can do it, I promise. So, there's great information out there. There are great ways to get involved. If nothing else from this event, I really hope that you find a way to get involved. with somebody on the campus, one of the groups on campus or off campus, somebody that you met tonight and got to have a conversation with, somebody that wasn't here tonight, right, that you can bring this conversation to. I think that's the point of this event, right, is just to get this going, to continue the organization, to continue the momentum that AS has brought into this campus, right? Associated students mentioned Monterey Palestine Solidarity in their resolution, as well as Palestine Solidarity Central Coast. If you're up closer to the Santa Cruz area, there's a group up there doing some great work as well, right? So plenty of ways to get involved. Don't leave here tonight without something that you can do going forward, right? And there's no reason to not have some plan of action going forward, another event to attend, a person to talk to, an organization to check out, right? That's the goal here, is to have something to do after this, right? So if you don't have that yet, stick around and talk to one of us and we'll give you something. All right, but thank you so much for being here, Dane. Yeah, close us out.
One last thing, can I get all my fellow SLI students to stand up really quick? Yes. You guys deserve your own credit. It's not just me up here. It's not just me and Jade and Astrid. Shout out to those people. Without them, we could not have all planned this out. So, love you guys. All right, there you go.
Thank you, Dane. And yeah, there's about 7 more. This isn't the whole class, but yeah, thank you again to these students for giving us this opportunity, right? It really is them that spurred this on and gave us this opportunity.
No, and thank Tyler too, because Tyler's pretty much the one that got me on this. If it wasn't for him, I don't think any of us would really be here. So, thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.
I get your opinion.
That doesn't give me the right.
That's your opinion. I'm giving you my opinion. You're a shitty ass person. You shouldn't be here.
Oh, you're a shitty ass person and you shouldn't be here.
Okay, that's what I'm leaving.
This is what happens when you confront people who are minding their own business. You start using some profanity and you walk out.
Already, who cares? I can say whatever I want. I could be so much ruder. I could be so much ruder to you.
I was trying to before I was confronted.
I could be so much ruder to you. I could tell you 1,000 things, but I'm changed now and I'm not going to be mean to you. This is me being nice. So take that.
Is a student and a Palestinian woman who is going through
I'm a person, I'm an Asian American man, and I'm going through a lot of things.
I want you to stop interrupting.
It is not your right to say who you can and cannot speak.
To be mindful of the
I
fact
want
that
you
you're talking
to respect my rights
here.
as a human being.
You have all the rights in the world. What rights don't you have?
So why are you telling me what to do? What gives
I'm
you
not
the right
telling
to
you
tell me
what to do.
do?
I'm asking you to respect the students.
I'm asking you to respect me, and you're not respecting me
How
with
am I
all
not
of your
respecting
profanity. With all of your profanity.
You know what? I haven't met you. I'm Pam Montoya. What's your name?
Well, this guy is hyperventilating and sweating. This makes me really, really nervous.
He's warm, my dude. It's a hot
Like,
room.
you're clearly really comfortable and you're making
Oh, you're
everyone else
telling me to leave too?
Yes,
I'm getting warm
I'm
too.
saying you should probably leave because you're clearly uncomfortable
Well,
making everyone
since
else.
you're so uncomfortable, why don't you?
You're the one
really
making everyone
trying,
here
honestly, to
uncomfortable.
leave.
Oh, really?
This is, we are
No,
on
you're
our
standing
way
right
out
in
the
front
door.
of me,
No,
swearing
my
at
dude.
me.
Out the door.
Like, you made a young woman in a space that's talking about her culture feel uncomfortable. And
I
that,
felt very uncomfortable,
and
but I didn't take
I
it
get that.
personally.
This is personal for her. These are her
This is
friends.
personal for me too,
You
but
just
I
said
didn't
you
take
didn't.
it personally.
Listen, but this is her friends and her family.
We need to stop engaging with this guy.
No, I just want you
He's
to
not
understand.
he's a bad actor.
I'm not asking you to leave.
And you know,
Appreciate
this
you,
is a
Tyler.
guy who's
You handle things well, yeah.
He's been using
I'm married
profanity
to him.
all
I know
night,
who he is. He cusses at me daily.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
and that's
We're
unprofessional.
adults. We can cuss. Words
And that's,
only
and
have
I
the
can
power.
say that that's unprofessional.
You can, but right now in that
So
place.
you're saying you can say what you want to say?
No,
and
right
I'm
now
saying
am
I
I
can
being
say what I want to
unprofessional,
say.
sir? What I'm asking you to
if
If you
you're
listen.
still,
professional.
I totally understand if you.
Listen.
Oh, no, I'm
What
down.
saying
And
is
you're
in that
telling-
moment
you're
I don't
making
really
me
know you,
come
but
back
I
to listen.
respect you a lot after
woman,
hearing how you handle
in that
it.
moment right
Chris.
there, he was
Yeah,
protecting
yeah.
a woman.
He was
saw,
protecting
yes,
I
he was.
walking
I'm with the
out
As a
and
yeah,
she started
yeah.
screaming.
This is my buddy Wes.
Yeah, what's up, Wes?
I'm a little
obnoxious. Yeah, you've been around. How are you?
Yeah, I'm curious. I've heard people mention a few times this sort of resistance from admin to having events like this. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, my last event was a screening of a film called Israelism,
Okay.
and we had sponsorships from departments and campus
Mhm.
organizations, and they were variously contacted by administration and told they can't sponsor us, essentially. And then the exact same thing happened this time. The students put out the flyer, and almost immediately the groups that we had listed as sponsored started getting calls from admin and being told they couldn't do it. The
Who were-
Otter Cross Cultural Center was the first one to get scratched off the list.
Okay.
Yep, immediately.
Okay.
Got the call and was told they couldn't do it. The Service Learning Institute
Like couldn't do it.
could
So
not
that's
do
from
it.
admin saying.
Period. Yeah, and
What-
Otter
what sort
Cross
of,
Cultural
yeah.
Center goes through a democratic student process.
Yeah, totally.
You have to like submit a form online to say here's what your event is or whatever, and then they go through their democratic student process to decide, yeah, we want to sponsor this, no, we don't, whatever. So they had done their process, decided to sponsor the event. They were even going to give us a couple $100 to do food in the lobby out there before the event. And
OC3
then-
was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, they got told by administration that they couldn't sponsor.
Okay.
And contacted me and told me I had to take their name off of everything.
Okay.
The dean for the Service Learning Institute told us that the Service Learning Institute can't sponsor the event, and we had to even take the class name off the event.
Okay.
We had Centro was one of the sponsors. They got pulled. Associated Students was an
Okay.
official sponsor. They got told they can't sponsor the event, so then they just passed their resolution in support of the event
Okay.
instead.
So sorry, was that for Israelism too, or is
No,
that?
that's all for this.
That's for
event.
this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all for this event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who's making those decisions in admin to?
I have no idea. I'm assuming it's the VP of Student Affairs.
Okay, who's that? That's I just talked to him.
Corpening, is that
Yeah,
his-
Mike Corpus. or-
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know his name, but
Okay.
And that's the thing, they've never talked to me. That not
Okay.
a single person has ever talked to me
Interesting.
until I requested a meeting with Dean Mayo to
And
talk about.
who is that the
That's
dean
the
of?
dean of the Service Learning Institute.
Okay.
Yeah, and to talk about the Service Learning Institute sponsorship, and was told that they can't sponsor essentially. But I requested that meeting. No one has ever
Okay.
talked to me.
Very
Not a
interesting.
single human has talked
Yeah.
to me.
Okay, so this event was put on by students for the service learning class.
Yeah,
Or-
it's their final project. They have a class action project, which is the
Okay.
final project. So I actually brought in Students Against the Tuition Hike because
Okay.
I thought that would be a cool class project.
Yeah.
And then they also attended, a few of them, my Israelism screening.
Okay.
And so yeah, they decided to do a screening as their final project.
Very cool.
And yeah, this was all designed by them.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as the potential for police presence at this event, what was that all about?
I have no idea where that came from, except I got an email earlier today from, I can't remember her name, Yvonne, Gordon, Commander Gordon.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I got an
Yeah.
email from Commander Gordon saying there were security concerns over the event and asking if, I could give my input.
Interesting, okay.
And so I gave her my phone number, and we had a nice conversation. She seemed like a very reasonable person.
What did she say about the security concerns?
She just said essentially that admin is scared because they see what's happening on other campuses, and don't want something like that to happen here, essentially. And so yeah, we're afraid that this could spark something, or I don't know, but that was their concern.
Okay.
It felt like there was going to be like a specific police presence here.
Yeah.
And then after our conversation, she seemed to be like, well, sometimes there's a lot of the sky is falling around here, and it
Yeah.
turns out to be nothing. Like, obviously you could see this was a perfectly fine event,
Mostly
no
pretty
security
good, yeah,
concerns
yeah.
here except for one annoying person.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what that was about. I don't know where that came from, except that they're just scared because they see what's happening everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, how do you compare what's happening here at CSUMB to what's happening on other campuses?
There's nothing happening here. What's happening here?
Yeah.
What's happening here? This
Well, I
is
mean,
all
that's
that's fucking happening
that's
here.
kinda
This is the
what I
only thing
mean,
that's
yeah.
happened.
No, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I
Yeah,
mean. How do
exactly.
you explain that? The sort of Why isn't there an encampment at
We've-
CSUMB? Why isn't there more?
Just
going
in my
on?
experience, we've always been kind of a more apolitical campus, even
Okay.
when I was a student and we tried to organize.
Okay,
It was
I'm
a
curious
Harvard
when,
place.
you don't have to tell me, but when
12
was
to
that?
15, yeah.
12
I
to 15,
graduated in
okay, okay,
15,
so not that
yeah.
long ago.
No,
Okay.
no. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was the same when I was here, right? It was small groups of people like ADLC. For us, it was SQE. ADLC wasn't
Okay.
around then, but
Okay.
SQE was the really radical group, and we tried and we pulled some protests off
Yeah.
and things like that, but it was never really a very politically active campus.
Why do you think that is? That's maybe a little broader of a
Smaller
question.
student body, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I little more isolated. We're not near a big city, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
Maybe those things play a part in it. But man, it's like Stanford's only an hour away, like,
Yeah.
and they got an encampment, you know, and it's like
Totally.
Yeah, so I really think it just has to do with kind of how isolated we are.
Yeah.
Not a huge campus community here. We've got freshmen and sophomores on campus, but after that, they're kind of spread out a little bit.
Yeah,
Just
totally.
feels, not as connected in some of those ways. You take it off.
Can you tell me a little bit about CSUMB's relation to Israel as far as investments? It's kind of been referred to, like the provost.
I don't know enough to tell you
Okay.
about that, to be
Do you
perfectly
know where I
honest.
could find information on that?
AS.
AS,
the
okay.
AS folks are forming a BDS committee, basically, a
Okay.
steering
Talk to
committee.
Robin, maybe.
That is, their whole goal is to guide student clubs and organizations
Okay.
across campus on like BDS targets. So
Okay.
they're doing that work, and I'm gonna follow them.